Hello and welcome. This is the Quiet Miss Reads, and today I'm going to be reading The Lost Heir by Sutherland, and this is Chapter 6. Don't you dare touch them, Tsunami yelled. She whirled and smacked a seeping out of the sky as she reached for Clay. Starflight had already ducked below Clay's massive wings. Glory drew her neck back and bared her fangs. I am the Queen's daughter, and I order you to leave those dragonettes alone, Tsunami shouted. The guards looked from her to Shark uncertainly. His eyes were pale, reflecting pools, hiding his thoughts. He slowly raised one talon and made a strange circling motion. With it, a sign in the seeming language, Tsunami guessed. Whatever it was, it worked. To Tsunami's relief, the guards backed away. But when she glanced at Riptide, she noticed that he still looked tense and unhappy. Maybe he's just afraid of Shark, she thought. Very good, she said, trying to sound like she was in command. Now, take us to my mother. The Queen is conducting business at the Deep Palace, Shark said flatly. We will take you to the Summer Palace, where you may wait for her. He made another talon signal, and the two guards broke away from the group, winging off across the water. Taking the message to my mother, Tsunami thought, her wings expanding with joy. They were so close to everything she'd always imagined. I'm going to meet my parents today. Islands flashed by below them as they flew on, now with a tight guard of sea wings. Some of the islands were small patches of sand, barely big enough for one dragon to land on, and others were towering jagged rocks shooting out of the water. Ahead, Tsunami saw that one looked like a huge dragon skeleton, with holes and gaps all through the pale stone. The stone skeleton nose pointed toward another island, this one ringed with forbidding-looking rocks and presenting only high, sheer cliff face on all sides. The top was a rioting jungle. Thick green vines and trees pressed so close together that there was not a single spot clear enough to land on. Tsunami was startled when Shark suddenly swerved and dove toward the base of the cliff. He splashed down between two sprawling rocks, sharp and evenly matched like dragon horns, and vanished into the azure water. She blinked. Where had he gone? The water was so clear here that she could see fat black turtles strolling across the sand at the bottom of the ocean. But then, one by one, half the guards around them dove for the same spot, and each of them disappeared the same way, gone before the bubbles of their splash had cleared. Clay, stop, she said, brushing his wing. Riptide? It's the entrance to the Summer Palace, Riptide said. There's no other way in. You'll have to swim. Sunny let out a small, unhappy noise. How far? she asked Riptide. You only have to stay underwater for short swims, he answered. It has been redesigned so Queen Blister in particular can visit. And she hates water, Sunny said hopefully, since she's a sandwing too. Is she here now? Starflight asked. Riptide shook his head. She's not fond of swimming, and even after all the changes we've made, she rarely visits. Tsunami was secretly a bit relieved to hear that. After meeting Burn, she wasn't looking forward to encountering the other two rival Sandwing sisters. What if they were all equally dangerous and crazy and controlling? But eventually, the Dragonettes would have to choose one of the three to win the war. To be fair, Tsunami thought they probably needed to meet both Blister and Blaze. Then again, if Tsunami's mother liked Blister enough to alter her palace and accommodate her, surely that was a sign of Blister's favor, wasn't it? Maybe they didn't have to meet Blaze. Maybe supporting the Sea Wings and Blister would be the obvious right thing to do. Stay close behind me, Riptide said. I'll light up my stripes so you can follow, and I'll flash them to signal you to surface at the breathing spots. Clay said, so about this blindfold, any chance? Once we're in the tunnel, Riptide answered. He turned and dove for the Dragonhorn rocks. Tsunami flipped her tail into Clay's front talons and dove after Riptide, towing Clay behind her. Her scales tingled with excitement. Deep breath, Clay, she called. She was not far behind Riptide when he dove into the water, but even so, she nearly lost him in the fizz of bubbles that swarmed up in her face as she splashed down. She blinked frantically, searching for a hole or a tunnel or an entrance. Long, sun-colored tendrils of kelp grew up from the sandy floor, glowing in orange gold in the light flittering down from above. They were clustered around the base of the cliff, waving like a forest of octopus arms, as tall as the 5 dragonettes laid end to end. The whole of the cliff must be hidden by the tendrils, but where? Then Tsunami saw Riptide's glowing tail knocking the golden kelp curtain aside, and she plunged after him. It was hard to swim as fast as she wanted to with Clay clinging to her tail. She could feel him trying to beat his wings and kick helpfully, but he kept accidentally whacking into underwater boulders and slowing her down. She poked her head into the forest and felt the tendrils of kelp slide and slither around her snout. Up close, she could see clear globules growing on them. They were surprisingly sticky, while the rest of the tendril was slippery smooth. It felt like gigantic golden inchworms were swarming around her. She had to swim through a thick patch, following the glimmer of Riptide's lit-up tail, before reaching the cliff wall. Suddenly, the tendril slithered away and popped her out into a dark underwater tunnel. Not entirely dark. Riptide was directly in front of her, his luminescent stripes all glowing. He reached around her, guided Clay into the tunnel, and unwrapped the seaweed blindfold. Clay blinked and rubbed his hands against his eyes, then immediately turned back to the faint sunlight, searching for the others. Glory came through next, her snout wrinkling as she pushed tendrils off her wings. Tsunami noticed that her scales had rippled off, the orange-gold color crisscrossing the silver that had been there before. She wondered if Glory... page turn. If Glory had done that deliberately, or if her scales automatically tried to match their environment when she was stressed. After a long pause, Surflight burst through after her. His face was puffed up like he was about to explode, and on his back, Sunya was shivering violently. Riptide flashed the lights in his tail and shot upward, aiming for a hole in the tunnel roof not far inside the entrance. Tsunami was expecting more of a swim, and was surprised when her head almost immediately popped out into air. It wasn't much air in the tiny cavern, barely lit up by a faraway gleam of sunlight up a long, narrow chimney. The dragons' bodies were still in the watery tunnel below. There was only enough room in the cavern for their heads, all gathered closely in the pool. Tsunami could see right away that there was nowhere to climb out. This was the place to stop and breathe, nothing more. Sunny and Starflight both gasped for air like they hadn't breathed in months. Clay flumed in the dark to pat Sunny's head and pulled her blindfold off as well. Good thing there's a breathing holes here, Clay remarked to Riptide. So close to the entrance, I mean. Riptide inclined his head in a sort of nod. Queen Blister insisted on it. Tsunami felt the whoosh of several sea-wing guards swimming past below them. She knew there would be a few of them bringing up the rear, making sure none of the dragonettes ran off to spread the news of the Summer Palace's secret location. She couldn't keep her wings still. She couldn't keep her wings still. They thrummed like trapped dragonflies, wanting to spring loose. She was so close. This is her palace. Her dragons were only a few wing beats away. After 6 years of imagining what this would be like, she didn't think she could stand another minute of waiting. Let's go, she said, splashing the others enthusiastically with her tail. Good grief, Glory said with a shake. It's like you've been possessed by Sunny or something. Come on, we're almost there. Tsunami flashed her stripes happily, and the other dragonettes covered their eyes. I can swim from here, Sunny said to Starflight, or I'll hold on to Clay if you all go too fast. Starflight looked disappointed and relieved at the same time. Riptide sank below the surface, and Tsunami ducked after him, too excited to wait for the others. Now it was easy to follow Riptide's glowing scales. Now it was easy to follow Riptide's glowing sails. The tunnel twisted up and down and around corners, with frequent stops like the first for breathing. Too frequent. If you asked Tsunami, each one made her want to bang her head into the cliff walls. She lost count after the 4th stop, but there had been at least 10. How long was this tunnel? Then, finally, there was a light ahead. Real light, not glowing scales. A moment later, they swam out of the tunnel into an open lake, lifted their heads above the water, and breathed in deeply. Green-tinted sunlight dazzled their eyes at first, but as their vision cleared, Tsunami saw dragons. Over 100 blue and green dragons surrounded them, all of them staring expectantly at Tsunami. Her tribe, her dragons, her future subjects. They had reached the summer palace of the Sea Wings, and the heart of the Kingdom of the Sea. And that is the end of Chapter 6 and of Part 1. Once again, this is The Lost Heir, the second book in the Wings of Fire series by Ch.6. Sutherland. Have a great day.